Hey everybody, Tony here. Normally this would be turn 14 of the Narvik campaign, but I think I'm going to call it at this point. It's another Allied victory, so they end up with 152 victory points, which gives them a decisive victory, just barely by 2 points. Um, at this point, there is no way that the second division is going to break through all this. I mean, the AA there is going to give them a major headache. Um, and then another supply base could appear here um, because the next supply base is way up here at Harstad. The second could try to force their way through here. Um, the 6th AA battalion currently has 2 battalions in it. So this hex is going to be even harder than this hex to get through. They could potentially go through here, but they have to stop here in order to fight combat. The tanks can't go with them. And then they would have to fight their way all the way up here just to get to Narvik. And there's no way that that could happen in 2 turns, even if I were to call in the 1st Mountain Division at the cost of 10 victory points. There is just no way. The 2nd Mountain Division is the strongest division that I have, and everybody else is road bound. But the Germans have southern and central Norway completely under control. And it would probably take another 5, 6, or 7 turns for them to make their way up to Narvik. One of the keys is that when the Allies withdraw from a port via naval movement, they can just move to another port and land. And so these units here could theoretically just keep moving north. And possibly there should be some rule that if they move by naval transport from a port, they have to go back to England or go back to France or wherever. Because for the most part, that's really, I think, what historically happened once the Low Countries fell and France was under attack and in a lot of trouble. They decided, well, we're just going to give this area up, and they withdrew. So the question becomes, is there any way, because now I've lost this to the Germans yet again, is there any way that the Germans can win this game? There are those who believe that landing here at Narvik is a losing proposition, and that the best way to do it is to capture Trondheim and drive up the neck. But the thing is that you have to land at Trondheim early. You have to build a bridgehead here and start pushing up before the Allies can really get set. Even though I was honestly surprised how easily the 2nd Mountain Division was able to just push through them. Of course, they had the help of the bomber squad that kept destroying all of the supply bases. But let's go and take a closer look at the beginning of this game, because it is paramount that you get a good start. So this is the initial game setup, and I think that one of the primary mistakes that I make in taking Narvik is that I don't send enough troops there, because I like to grab as many ports down south as I possibly can. Oops, that's the wrong. No, not the expanded breakdown. Since you can take stripped down troops, and they have to be infantry, they cannot be artillery at this point, you, I think, would be best served to send 2 stripped down regiments at the cost of 6 of your 15 transport points. Then later, if you can get the divisional headquarters in place, where the headquarters can absorb the units so that you can fit more in there if possible, I think that it's important that you keep it broken down. Because the thing that happened in the last game was that the Allies performed an airstrike on Narvik leading up to the attack, and they had 1 regiment and I believe 2 artillery battalions, but the regiment kept together. And it doesn't make any difference if the regiment is together or broken down into battalions. They still have the same strength. But if you break it down into regiments and they score 1 hit, then you only disrupt 1 unit. You're still 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You've still got 10 points there. Instead of, if you flip these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 9, but let's say that one of these gets sunk. You know, it still will make a difference in the end. I think, anyway. The other thing that the German player really needs to be aware of is the air unit withdrawals that occur during the course of the game. Let me close this again. File. Load game. As you can see, let's see. This right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bombers is pretty much all that's left of the bomber force. Not counting the HE-115Bs, which are used as transports, or the dive bombers. They don't get withdrawn. But these 6, that's it. At some point, you end up with, or you have at least 18 to 30 bombers available. But you need to be aware of when they start to be withdrawn. You need to get all of your major important bombing out of the way, like bombing ports. One of the things that the bomber force can do is they can bomb ports preemptively. Like they could bomb Namsos or Moshan or this port here. Or if they could reach, they could bomb Harstad or Tromsø and put hits on the port to where if they can achieve 3 hits, then the port cannot sustain a Allied supply base. So you don't necessarily have to go against the supply bases per se. You can go against the ports themselves to make it so that it will not support. Another thing that the Allied or the Axis player really needs to be aware of, and this is a failing in that I have constantly. But let's say that we put the 6 up there, the 6 REs up there of stripped down mountain troops. Then that would leave us the next thing that I tend to do is I tend to take 2 9-4 regiments and land them at Trondheim. And the idea being that if these units retreat, then one of these regiments can push on to the airfield, and then during the exploitation phase of the first turn. That is the only time that a unit may move during the exploitation phase. And that's only if the Norwegians retreat. If the Norwegians stand their ground, then they'll have to fight combat. And then in order to move on, they'll have to fight combat. But assuming that these 2 abandon Trondheim, or there's 2 units there. Assuming that the Norwegians abandon Trondheim, you must push on to the airfield, which is occupied by Norwegian units. And the Germans don't have to fight combat at that point. The Norwegians, on their half of the turn, have to decide whether they're going to fight or not. And considering that they have 4 combat factors versus 9, and it'd be a 1-2 suicide mission, they're most likely going to abandon the Hex, turning the airfield over to the Germans. Then what I do in the course of my planning is I like to land a 9-4 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this will be all 15. But generally I will only land 3 up there, and then I'll land another regiment down here at Oslo. But I mean, let's say that I only land a 3rd one, or land a regiment at Narvik. Then that allows me to take one of the remaining mountain regiment and land it at Trondheim, which is what I did. Unfortunately, this game, these Norwegian units decided to stand and fight rather than backing off. So the Germans were never able to push to the airfield. But I will generally land 194 infantry regiment there, 194 infantry regiment there, and a 94 infantry regiment down here. And that's really a major mistake, I think. As I sit and look at the plan, the reason being is I now have 3 regiments of the same division in 3 different locations. And Bergen is generally going to just sit and hold. Trondheim may have to sit and hold for a while unless you can get reinforcements up there quickly. but they're never going to be able to assemble, or their whatever's left of them are never going to be able to assemble into the division in order to start pushing through, because the 69th overall is the strongest of the divisions, totaling 42 points compared to the second mountain division's 28 points. They have 3 9 combat factor regiments, including the artillery. The 69th has 3 9-4 infantry regiments and a 14-4 artillery regiment. And that's assuming you can get all the battalions of that regiment through. So here's what I'm thinking. Let me delete these real quick. Oh, actually, I didn't want to delete them. Did not want to delete them. So which one is it? So we're going to have to go get it again. Put that there. And that there. And these are, which one's 236? 159. Germany. 69th. 169th artillery. 150. 193 was the one that I accidentally deleted. Alright, so here's what I'm thinking for the next plan. 2 mountain regiments sent to Narvik. Odds favor that 1 out of the 6 is going to be sunk in transit. Also, as the Allied player, you have the opportunity to interdict that port and gain 5 victory points. Don't do it. The trade-off is that you gain 5 victory points. The Germans gain another regiment. Not a very strong regiment, but a regiment nonetheless. And that is come on. Oh, lovely. Oh, I see what I did. I'm going to have to fix that. But this is the point of going through all this. I am now going to see, new note. Whoops. Oh, what'd I do with it? Narvik. Clean up. Germany. Marine. List into a scrollable list. Okay, so that will be fixed before the day's out. But they gain 3 1-4 battalion, naval battalions. Or is there 4? They gain 4, and then a headquarters. So there is another 4, and if what am I gonna say? If the German player sends 1 regiment to Narvik, as the Allied player, do not interdict Narvik, because that will give them that regiment of stranded sailors from all the destroyers that were sunk there. And it's almost, not quite, but almost the equivalent of sending these two. And I think that that's part of the reason why I got in the habit of sending only one every time. Was I was anticipating getting the second regiment there for free. But the best thing you can do as the Allies is just don't interdict the port. Let the destroyers go. If the German player sends 2 regiments to Narvik, it's kind of a moot point. You can interdict it or not. I would still advise not interdicting it, because the thing is if the headquarters goes down and they get the battalions, something needs to be set to disrupt it because they are overstacked. They've got entirely too much in here. Unless they move one regiment out, say, like to protect the backside, which actually would not be a bad move. So if they send one out to protect the backside, because ultimately that is what, in my game, that's what ultimately doomed the troops. Because you don't need to hang on to Narvik proper. You just need to hang on to a hex. Narvik or a hex adjacent to it, which is usually these 2 here. So basically one of those 3 hexes within Norway. So as the Allied player would be doing themselves a huge favor by just not even interdicting Narvik. So we head further south, and in order to implement the plan of possibly capturing the airfield here. I know how to spell it, I don't know how to say it. I call it Vernes or Vernes, and that's probably so wrong. But again, generally I like to put 294 infantry regiments here to land and hope that the dice favor me and those units retreat. Then I can move on, and by the beginning of turn 2 I will hold this airfield. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now comes the altering of the plan. So I'll put the 69th Division responsible for the Trondheim area. At this point, we can make the 196th, the 181st, or the 163rd responsible for the Bergen area. But, let's see. So let's go with the 163rd. That's actually not what I wanted. Let's go with the 163rd. And we'll take 1 battalion here and land it at Bergen. And if they are forced to fight, they will be fighting at 1 to 2 odds. And not great odds. Odds are that they'll retreat in the face of the battalion attack. Because the retreat is not voluntary. as in other turns during the game, because this is surprise. If they fail, they make a roll to try to stand their ground rather than retreat, which is the exact opposite of the rest of the game. If they fail their roll to stand their ground, then they have to vacate, and the battalion moves in. Now, all of a sudden, it becomes problematic when the 3-5 Mountain Artillery Division arrives here within its turn 1 or turn 2, and they can turn around and then counterattack at Bergen. So, because of the airfield, it becomes a priority to get supply in and more troops in as quickly as possible. So from there, we have a battalion there. And like I said, you have to plan with the assumption that the Norwegians are going to retreat. And they won't always. But let's say for a moment that, let's go back to Bergen here. Let's say for a moment that the Norwegians don't retreat, that they stand their ground. They're now attacking at a 1-2, and they're in attack supply, even though no supply is present. They're attacking at a 1-2. 1-2 is actually not very friendly to the attacker. And there's also a -1 for the rough. Right? No effect. No effect at this level. In the normal Europa game, that's a -1. But they have a 1 in 6 chance of a no effect. A 1, 2, 3, 4 in 6 chance, or 2 in 3 chance of having to retreat, whether they are disrupted or not disrupted. And a 1 in 3 chance of being eliminated, or 1 in 6 chance. Those are actually favorable odds for an attack like this. No worries if this is forced to retreat, disrupted or not disrupted. Basically what happens with it goes back to the available units box on the first turn. And actually, I think at any other time when if an opposed landing, that's the word I was trying to think of. Opposed landing fails, I think it goes straight back to the box and becomes available. So there's really not a lot of risk there. Now, the final spot that I would recommend and I would use the 196 or the 181st for this, or even the 214th. And that's another funny thing is some of the details that they include in these games are really, they're cool. I'll give them that. It's a lot of research that they have done to find out information on these units. And some of the nations, it is not easy. But I think that having like the 196th Infantry Division winterized is silly because winterization isn't even used in this. It may be used in the Europa game, but it is not used in Narvik. So, again, it's cool, but it's not needed. So, just for giggles, let's grab one of the 214th. Let's take 2 battalions, because that'll bring us to 15. And we will land 1 here at Moss, 1 here at Drummond. Now, assuming that they survive their anti-shipping roll to make it to Norway, they can move up to half their movement points when they land during the movement phase. So these units both would have 2 movement points left. And you move by road along here, and you grab this airfield here. Plus you grab the 2nd artillery store. Up here at Trondheim, you grab the 3rd artillery store. And then using its ability to move, that grabs the 1st artillery store. Now when you bring in the follow-up wave, the bulk of the follow-up wave is going to land in the Oslo Fjord area, primarily because that is the lowest risk. But landing at Moss will hopefully help protect this unit here being by itself. It's unlikely that the Norwegians are going to attack out of Oslo, but you never know. Because that's 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, this unit here could swing all the way around along with this unit and maybe this unit, and then, in order to protect Oslo, that slides in there. So in order to try to grab the 1st, that's 7 to 2, that's a 3 to 1 attack there. So you could even potentially go ahead and break my rule and, well, it's not really a rule, but send a 3-4 battalion there instead. And that would give it 6-7, so basically 6 to 3. That would give it a 2 to 1, which isn't bad, but it isn't really overwhelming either, because they might have to retreat, but they might have an exchange, which costs the Germans troops. The Norwegians always want to get exchanges, because it ultimately wears down their opponent. Coming from Germany, the Ju-52 transports are the only transports that let me get this back open, the paratroopers can jump from. So I always try to stage at least a grab of Sola Air Station outside of Stavanger to try and help block off Stavanger and prevent reinforcements from getting there easily. If this airfield can be grabbed, then you can fly in other battalions via air. You can fly in 2 more battalions, and that would be a total of 12 transports. You have 30 Ju-52s to start, but keep in mind that at the end of turn 2, 18 of them go away. And it's always advisable to be more careful with them than I usually am. I will send them unescorted, um, which is silly. It's very poor um, planning and execution on my part. But in order to counter this, the Allies, they will have skuas, which they should get to as soon as their carriers appear. They should get the skuas out to the carriers as quickly as they can. But they have like the Blend 1F. Um, let's go look for skua. Let's do this one at a time. So the interception range is completely different from that of normal Europa. I don't understand why an air unit in a 4-day turn can use this entire range to intercept, but an air unit in a 2-week turn cannot. But as you can see, the Allies need to get their air units out here to the Shetland Islands. Is that? And you can see the coverage, the interception coverage that they have. They cover Bergen and they cover Stavanger. Making it very dangerous for transports to fly alone to those areas. The skuas also have quite a bit of range, covering both Stavanger and Bergen, and as far as Andelsness. So the Air Force, the British can cover quite a bit of ground here. Wow, that looks weird. Shut that off. Huh, that's weird. So, for a lot of the things that the Germans can do, the Allies can counter. It's not like they're completely toothless. It's even not like the Norwegians are completely toothless. The Norwegians just have to bide their time and look for opportunities. They can't fight toe to toe with the Germans, but they need to look for opportunities and maybe a gap in the line where they can slip through and cause havoc, destroy supply depots, recapture cities, recapture mobilization centers. Their ideal strategy is just to slow down the Germans as much as possible from getting to Trondheim. And once it becomes identified, and I was a little slow to do that in the last game that I played, once it's identified that the Germans have broken through, they need to come up here north of Trondheim and reform their line as a buffer against the between the Germans and the British. And it's not that it's felt that the Norwegians can be sacrificed, but the Norwegian troops, losing them does not cost the Allied player victory points like losing British units does. And I think in the last game, the British lost an infantry brigade. I think it was the 15th that they lost. But always try to keep the Norwegians in between the Germans and their goal, primarily because they can retreat. They have the ability to retreat. So in the future, I think I'm going to give that a try. And maybe during staging, I will try to do some different things, such as possibly doing a post landing at Stavanger, because I feel it takes me far too long to get this area here subdued, because most of my troops are here milling about, and I don't know where I just moved something accidentally, but it's not a big deal because I think that that's supposed to be there. It's not a big deal because I'm not saving this anyway. But I think that when I get completely finished, I'm going to create a video discussing what this vessel module can do, what it can't do. There is one bug in it which showed itself in the game playtest, but I don't know how to fix it. I've seen it before, but it's not as it doesn't occur as often as it had in the past, because I had seen it before earlier on. But fortunately, this has taken me so long because I've started it over so many times because I just wasn't happy with it. I am fairly happy with it now. When I finally get it uploaded, there may be somebody out there who's more knowledgeable than I am, who is able to fix this thing, improve upon this thing. But the important thing is, or I think the important thing is that it gets out there. So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of running through playtests of every single scenario, I'm going to run through the orders of battle and make sure that all the counters are present, that they flip over properly. And I'm sure I've learned a lot during this, and I've also examined how other people have done their modules, and I see a lot of things out there that I like, that I want to rip off. I mean, borrow. And a lot of way to get things to do better, to look better. So, anyway, I just wanted to cover some. What did I do wrong? What could I do better as the German player? So I hit a wrong button somewhere and it stopped recording. So I'm going to just keep this brief and then tag it on to the end of it. I just wanted to review what things that I had done wrong in this game and how it can improve. Not because I prefer the Germans to win. This is a game after all. I want to see how the Germans can possibly win, because I've never done it before. But, for right now, I'm going to be moving on to other projects. I have started laying the groundwork for a Marita Merker build. I've got the maps assembled. I have just started making copies of the counters, and I'm massaging them to make them look as good as I can, similar to these that are in here. I actually don't think that will take me near as long to do, but I will be. There's like 2 or two scenarios that need to be built. I'd like 7 in this one. Um, but that's my next project. And then I'm thinking about um, doing possibly the old War in the Desert, Torch Near East and Western Desert. But there's a lot of things that I need to learn how to do first, um, that I've seen other modules do and I thought was pretty cool. So anyway, I'll be back at some point, hopefully soon, with another uh, round. I don't know if I'm going to be doing Storm over Scandinavia or what I'm going to be doing. I'm currently involved in a game of a winter war as the Soviets, and I am playing against my nephew in a game of Western Desert. Uh, we just finished his first game of Western Desert, and he played the British. And I had him reeling for a while, but all of a sudden the exchanges just started catching up to the Axis, and his forces kept building, and he finally landed the knockout blow at the end of October 1942 after he trapped uh, one of the Panzer divisions in Tobruk. I had shipped them to Tobruk, or I'd sent them to Tobruk, and one regiment of the 21st Panzer escaped to Tripoli. The motorized regiment was sent back to Tobruk. So unfortunately, only half the division escaped. He wiped out um, the remnants of the Africa Corps, and I'm very proud of him because he had come a long ways from where he started. He was so super cautious because he wasn't sure what he was doing. But then by the end, was just rolling across the desert, just going, "Hey, I dare you to stop me." And he was finally starting to take large chunks of land. Um, I couldn't be more proud of him. He's come a long ways. So now we've swapped roles, and I told him, I said, "Okay, you've done that as the British. That was the easy part. Let's see if he can do it as the Germans." So we'll see. I'm not going to do a video series on that because he's just learning, because I'm sure people would sit there and go, "Well, he's doing this wrong, and he's doing that wrong, and he's doing the other wrong." And that's fine. He's learning. So anyway, I'll figure out something to do because I like keeping this blog going. At some point, I'm going to put on the blog a written entry discussing the different things that we've discovered in this game of Narvik, um, such as the little tricks about being able to fly cargo back, or fly essentially fly transport missions during the air return phase, uh, and other little quirks in the game and things that need to be addressed somehow. So anyway, I'm going to quickly edit this together, and I'm going to put it up on YouTube, and I will be back. Take care, everybody.